What it do, my guys, and welcome to the What's Poppin' podcast, the show with explosive questions and even more explosive guests. From Resident Diesel, I'm Timmy D, and joined by the boys every single week, or at least one of them right now, Will from WMXX2000, and Malachi, he should be joining us very soon. From Reaper 6865, as per usual, we're also joined by Coraline Corsette. Coraline, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a writer, currently writing romance drama and relationship drama books. I have 3 novels out: First Fret 1, First Fret 2, and First Fret 3 with their associated subtitles. And I am selling my books on Amazon at the moment.
On Amazon, you can find it. And what's your handle?
My is Coraline Corsette.
Coraline Corsette. Find her on TikTok,
TikTok,
YouTube?
Instagram. It's Coraline Corsette author.
Okay.
Or author Coraline Corsette, whichever, depending on which one. But TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Regardless of where you guys go, don't worry. We got it in the description below. So let's get all this started. I want to talk. We got an awesome topic today, and it's fictional story writing. That's what we're going to talk about. And I know that if you're following What's Poppin', okay, if you watch these episodes, we do talk about writing quite a bit. But today we have this special guest. We got Coraline here. She's going to tell us a little bit about it. But Will, I know that you have been dying to ask this question, and the floor is yours.
Well, the thing is, I don't necessarily be a writer, but something I deal when I'm writing, with my music and everything, is I deal with writer's block. And with that being such a prevalent issue with almost everyone can relate to having to sitting down at a time and not being able to get their thoughts out. What's a tip that you would have for someone who is struggling with that? I mean, what I try to do in those situations is just try to sit there and focus on it, but not think of how much time it is. Because if I start thinking, oh God, I've been sitting here for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however, and I'll just focus on that, and it's not going to help me make any progress. So what tips would you have for someone?
Write about anything. So write about free write your thoughts about how frustrated you are about how you can't write. Write about, something that takes you off in the world. Write about anything that you can just put some words to, like anything you would want to have a conversation about, anything that's been bothering you. Start writing anywhere, and you'll soon be able to write enough that you're in that mood, you're in that mode, and it
Just
can
get
take
the
days.
wheel turning.
Yeah, it can take days of just like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write about whatever. And then you can start writing about what you need to be writing about to finish whatever project you're working on.
Do you think it's almost like a desensitization?
Yeah, I just think that like we're our own worst enemies when it comes to writer's block. Like we get real caught up in our heads and like, overanalyzing whether we're writing well and whether we're writing whether we're writing on topic and whether we're writing good enough to publish, and
Right.
I think that like if you can just write for yourself for a little while and just like, fall back in love with writing, then,
Right.
You can like get back on the horse.
Would you say that just thinking about the people who don't write, right? Like someone who hasn't put pen to paper in years, do you think it would be like, what's the difficulty level of getting that ball rolling again? Do you think?
I don't know. I learned to write in like kindergarten and was writing stories as soon as I could write sentences.
Wow.
I've never really stopped. I'm kind of a compulsive writer, and so there's never been that gap for me. So I don't really know.
Okay, interesting. Because for me, it's like, of course, for those of you who follow Resident Diesel or Timothy, I've been writing my book for a while, and I keep telling you guys, like, hey, my book's coming out. It's not, I promise. I'm trying to have it come out. I'm trying to finish it, but the writer's block is just so intense. And hearing your tips, I'm actually going to try that. Like probably after this podcast, if I get to writing, I'm probably going to try starting to write through myself just to understand why I can't just get it out, just get it out of my head onto the computer or the piece of paper and try to make it happen, because I believe that action begets success. And the fact that writer's block is literally the definition of not taking action, then I don't think I'll ever see success if I keep running into the writer's block.
And I think that for you, I think you come off as a little bit of a perfectionist in your writing. You wanted to be, amazing. And sometimes, especially the first draft, it's not going to be amazing. And it's like, you have to just kind of like, pardon my word, but vomit like words onto the page and then like come back and on the second draft, make it beautiful,
Right. Oh, I like that.
And there was somebody, Johnny Chiodini is somebody who writes for YouTube and stuff. And he said something about like, if you just write that first draft and then you sleep on it, like it's the next day, it's like little elves have come in and done the hard part for you. And all you have to do is just like, it's just perfect it.
That's so crazy that you say that. Will, you know me, I'm a copywriter, right? I write ads. In copywriting, Joe Sugarman, in his book, The Copywriting Handbook, he says, once you write your first piece of copy for an ad, leave it, set it down, go take a walk, go play a video game, go watch a movie, go on a date, go eat something. And then when you come back, like you said, Coraline, little elves have done all the work magically. And you come back and you're like, oh, well, this makes sense. And you just start writing it. That's something, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's across just writing in general, Yeah. So that's, and you know what? You know what's even crazier is that we are underneath the 15-minute mark. Right?
He has made it.
He has made it. But he's not even there. He's not even there. But so I'm gonna continue, right?
Yes.
And I'm gonna ask my question. So, and I'm just gonna read from my monitor. So I know you have your book out, First Fret, and then it follows the romance of individuals in the music scene. And I know that when writing something so close to reality, we draw inspiration from our lives and then put pen to paper. Sometimes it can be difficult for a lot of people out there to even get past character building. Just to help new authors out starting, it brings me to ask, what does your step-by-step process, right, look like when creating a completely new story from the ground up? Because my method is very, very different. Being that I write nonfiction, it's more laid out in steps and procedures rather than painting an entire beautiful story, a whole world of characters and events and life. I'm not creating life, I'm documenting life. So I'm curious on how you do it.
So I have always had extremely vivid dreams, and I will 90% of the dreams that I have, I will just disregard. Right. But occasionally I'll meet someone in a dream that is just interesting and has like an interesting backstory or interesting physical features or interesting way of speaking or way of moving.
Right.
And that person will become a character.
Interesting.
And sometimes the scenarios that I meet them in will become a character. First Fret, there were a few dream sequences that actually made it into the book.
Really?
Into the first book. After that, I had
Can you tell us? Can you tell us one of them?
When she meets him, when she meets Michael, who sorry, when my screen went blank. When she when Semolina meets Michael, who she's won this writing contest, and he's offering her the chance to go and write for him on tour. And when that happens, she has this like she's just meeting this person for the first time that she's known of, that she is famous and has a lot of respect for. And I had a dream about I don't even remember who it was. I don't think it was a real person, but I was meeting somebody who I just had a lot of respect for.
Right.
And kind of that like feeling of like not wanting to be overwhelmed by the person, wanting to like stand and be yourself and, like be respectful, but also, not be bowled over.
Right.
So, well, starstruck, but also like in Semolina's case, she's really concerned that this person is going to take advantage of her or has,
use her in some way.
Yeah. Or has illicit methods. She has a history of working in the sex industry, and she's afraid that he's wanting that from her, and he's coming to her like, oh, be my writer, but that's not really what he's after.
Right.
And part of that is because that's all she thinks she's good for. She doesn't think she's good as a writer. She thinks, she's only good as like a companion.
Right.
And her self-doubt causes her to really think that he's taking advantage of her at first.
And so she thinks, if I'm hearing this correctly, she's really thinking that, okay, well, he's two-faced. He doesn't want like me to write. He wants something else. He wants maybe not even romantic, but like just an intimate relationship with me versus something that I can give to him, like a skill.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. And if you want to learn the other dreams that she included into her book, you got to buy the book. Perfect. There it is. Look at that.
The first one.
Guys, you got to buy it. Amazon. Come on. What are we doing? We're just sitting here on a podcast talking to the author. So let me go ahead and introduce Malachi real quick. Malachi, welcome to the podcast, brother. You are here. Took you long enough. God damn it. You should start setting up maybe 40 minutes early. Well, Malachi,
thank you, pal.
You're welcome.
Love it.
You're welcome. This is Coraline Corsette. She is an author. She is the author of First Fret, a romanticized, because it's not exactly romance, a romantic
relationship drama
in the music industry, and we're talking about that. It's been a great conversation so far, but we're going to keep going. Malachi, do you have any questions for Coraline before I move on, or Will moves on? Look at him thinking.
I don't really read too many relationship novels at all. Completely. So, like, honestly, your question is what is a relationship? Like, let me know the definition of how you write a relationship.
Yeah.
Novel.
So when I was when I was talking to other romance authors, or romance authors for that matter, they were like, so a romance novel has, it has a meet cute, and it has, like they discover something bad about each other, they overcome that, and then, they fall happily ever after, and there's, a kiss or whatever. And my novel is really gritty, and it's really, it draws a lot on my own history of abuse, and just like, something that I could write authentically. And it talks about kind of like the ways that abusers step you into that kind of situation. It's little things that, oh, he's just jealous, it's cute. Oh, he's just a little less trusting. Oh, he's just so into me that, like he's a little possessive,
Mm-hmm.
And then before you know it, you're in this really serious situation. And Semolina is a smart person. But she, like I said just now, she's battling with being starstruck, and she's battling with being, but eventually she comes to really love and have a lot of trust for this person. And so, but it's very gritty. There's some pretty violent scenes. And that's not really romance. That's really more relationship drama.
Yeah. So now I think I see the difference between the relationship drama and the romance. Romance is more like swooning over each other, something like that, like courting each other. And then the relationship drama is purely based on like, hey, this person is this way to that person, they're this way to this person, and this is how it is between them.
It's not through rose-tinted glasses where everything can be painted with a hue of like, yeah, but he means well, or like, things like that.
Yeah.
There is, as she mentioned, there is some grit to it. There's a little bit of dirt on it.
It's crazy to bring this up, this topic, and just swaying from the topic of writing, but to bring it up, I've had a lot of female friends who have gone through some really, really bad relationships, bad shit, domestic abuse, and them finding their freedom is one of the most glorious things to me. And only 1 out of 2 found their freedom. The other one is still going through it, and I don't know why. And when you think about it, is Do you think, like, because you're writing about something like that, do you think that the psychology of somebody who gets stuck on an abuser is based on desperation?
No, I think abusers are really good at what they do. You know,
Yeah.
they're really good at
Abusing.
reframing.
Yes.
One of my my exes kept me around for a really long time by always, whenever I would get close to anyone that wasn't a handpicked friend that she had decided that I would be with,
Right.
she would tell me exactly what their flaws were and what was going to go wrong, and eventually that would actually come out to be true because everyone has flaws, and she was just
Right.
really good at pointing that out until I was completely isolated from anyone that she hadn't just decided, you know, was my friend. And that kept me around for a long time.
Manipulator.
And isolation and manipulation and those kinds of things, you know, they really have a big part to play in keeping really intelligent, really resourceful people in those relationships.
Right.
And honeymoon periods are no joke. When we talk about honeymoon period, that's the period after something violent or, you know, scary or whatever has happened, where it's just sunshine and daisies. It's just
Right.
so much sweetness and so much, you know, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And oh my God, I'm going to bring you flowers and I'm going to
It'll
make it
never
better.
happen
And it's never going
again.
to happen again. Exactly. And, you know, and abusers are also really good at being like, oh gosh, I feel terrible. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just so out of control. You know, like this is not what I want either. You know,
They're the
and
victim.
yeah, and they play the victim. Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, writing this book was really a lot of putting that in and also kind of telling the story through Semolina's eyes or Sem's eyes, where she, you know, believed a lot of that stuff.
Right.
So you can kind of read this book and be going through it if you've never been in an abusive relationship or even like a relationship with a lot of red flags.
Gives
And
you a
you're
good
like,
idea.
oh, this is sweet. This is great. This is wonderful. And then it's like, whoa, wait.
Oh, holy shit.
But you can also go through it being like, oh, there's a red flag. Oh, there's a red flag. If you
Right.
actually have experienced that before.
Right. And if you haven't experienced, would you say it's almost like you're giving warning signs?
Mhm.
Like to those who have never been in an abusive relationship, like, hey, if you read this book, remember that this is the kind of manipulator that these people are.
Look out
you
for
know?
this.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
One of
we'll
my close friends' wives is reading it right now, and she immediately picked up and was like, Michael's a creep. And I was like,
what? That's crazy.
I mean,
and I was like, you've had a hard time, haven't you?
Yeah. It's unfortunate that someone can pick up on those signs like that quickly. But I mean, if that's the life that you've unfortunately had, you know,
Right.
your perception is a little more in tune than other people's.
Will.
But I'll bring up another question.
Yeah.
Some people may find that the written word, it can be a little bit limiting when it comes to scene building and things of that nature. Myself personally, I'm more of a visual person, so like when I watch movies, I'm taking in the scenery, like what is this character wearing, you know, what's the music telling me about this person. What are some subtle ways that in writing you can tell excuse me, you can tell us a bit more about the character other than just an exposition of like, here's this guy, he's done this, he's this way, and
Yeah, physicality is a big part of it. So, you know, if someone has long, slender fingers, or they, you know, frown before they say a line of dialogue often, or somebody who's always grinning, or somebody who, you know, like somebody who is always on a substance, you know, like
Right.
it's the stuff that like is relatable. Like if you know a stoner, then you're gonna understand like
Right.
what the physicality of somebody who's always stoned
Right.
is like. And or if you you know somebody who's just like strange and spindly, you
Right.
know, you're gonna get that. You know, my characters are round, or they're warm, or they're cool, or they're, you know, whatever. And I definitely focus on character a lot. You know, there's a lot of plot in mine, but like for me, getting each scene is really getting
Each character.
and how they're interacting with each other.
Right. more so on how they think and how they're going to act, like in this event. That's interesting. And I love when you said slender finger. Like that was the very first thing you said. I'm like, wow, I could really envision someone
Mhm.
like with
Good,
long.
good word choice.
Yeah, just so stellar. Malika, you got a question for us?
Let's
Awesome.
see. Again, not very big
3
on
seconds.
romance novels.
Go ahead.
I definitely been I definitely been through, love life like very tormental. Especially my brother here knows that very well.
What do I know?
But comes hmm? What do you know? Like what you squeaking your eyes. Anyways, I was gonna really ask like how do you what is your characters in your book? Like I didn't been here for to let you speak from your book or anything. Like how do you make your characters and everything? Mm.
Well, my characters, so Semolina is
Okay.
a very southern girl, person who she's been writing for, years and years, but she's very like isolated. And the rest, when she joins the group, the traveling band, they're all out of Ireland and London.
Oh,
And so they're very worldly and they have different words for things. And that's another way that I built the characters is like they speak differently.
right.
And although it makes it such a pill to try and find a voice actor for an audiobook. But so they're
Mm.
flash and drugs and rock and roll and all this stuff. And so a lot of the fun is her trying to like figure out how to make her small
Keep
town
up.
brain wrap around all of that. Yeah.
It's just
So,
a whole
and that's-
different world for her.
And that's part of why he's able to catch her off guard is because the new normal is just so different for her. And so what's acceptable on tour is just different than what's acceptable at home,
Right.
So,
let me ask you a question. Going from your first book to your second book, how does the development of the characters change?
so the second book is called The Road Back.
There it is.
Yeah, I have them all in my lap. And
Paired.
but it could also be this subtitle could also be "Oops, the consequences of my actions."
Oh, wow.
And it's a redemption story for both of them. She has to grow a backbone and he has to deal with his anger and his possessiveness and what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
And they find an interesting way to deal with the fact that they have a kind of a strange power dynamic at this point.
Right.
But they learn how to make it consensual and they learn how to make it positive and they learn how to make it a thing that builds each other up instead of tearing each other down.
Like the first book where it was mostly about him and his abuse, almost, right? Like a controlling manipulator.
The first half is the buildup of like all the wonderful things that make you want to stay with somebody when that eventually happens.
Right. And you're saying the second volume of this series is his redemption story.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could,
Well, and hers. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you could let us know just a little bit, because I don't want to give too much out before the people buy your book. But what's the major redemption for Sim versus Mike?
Well, she chooses to stay with him through the court of law and the court of public opinion and the court of their family's opinions and all of this. But she also learns to set boundaries and learns to say,
no,
these are the things that are a problem for me. And either you fix these things or I'm gone.
Oh, taking
Very
control.
important life lessons there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so many big authors of of every genre claim different lengths of time that they dedicate to writing a new story. Some say it takes them years, others say it takes them weeks, right? And in those opposing views, it's very hard to know who's right. And it makes me wonder, how many minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, or years does it take to pump out a quality story for you? Because like I told you, I've been writing my book for 3 years and I'm still not done. Basically, I've got writer's block every 2 weeks. And I just want to make the process shorter. So I'm intrigued on how you do it.
Well, I can't say how to make it shorter. So
make it easy.
Yeah, no, I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and it manifests itself in my writing, and that like after I have written things pretty much long form and I've gotten everything out to where I want, I end up with like 45 different drafts.
Wow.
Pretty standardly on each novel. And sometimes a draft is, a 300-page book and there are 5 changes. Jesus but there's Christ. Still going to be another draft on top of that until there's no changes. So it took me about 3 or 4 years total to crank all 3 of these books out. And I also write other things while I'm writing.
We're gonna get to the 3rd book because I want the people to know the trilogy. They should know what they're getting into. I'm sure they want to know about it. But with you saying that, what else do you write beyond First Fret?
So I've been tooling around with a YA urban or modern fantasy for a number of years. I worked at a summer camp for a long time, and we all had these camp names, right? Like Cupcake or Sci-Fi or Sonnet.
What was yours?
Sonnet.
Really?
Yeah. And although the little kids thought it was Sonic, and they didn't think it was, the blue guy, because that was before the movie came out. So they thought I was Sonic, like, the restaurant.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I'm not that into French fries.
That's funny.
But so they I was sitting at a meeting because I was in like middle management at the camp, and I was sitting with, and I wrote down all of the people who I was sitting in the meeting with, and they all had these crazy names, and I was like, what superpower would somebody named Mallow have? And what superpower would somebody named Sci-Fi have? And Sprinkles, and Sugar Fairy Cupcake Flower, which was a real name. So I started coming up with like, and none of that survived. That was just like the initial idea.
Just the exercise of doing it.
Yeah. Right. But I came up with, like a society in which people, I don't want to say too much because I haven't, published it yet, but
right.
Could still be something.
People name their children based on what their gifts are.
Oh, interesting. I like that. And you're planning on publishing this soon?
Yeah, it's my next project. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, but hey, let me take this.
Try publishing it. I'm not sure yet. So.
What do you mean?
Well, so these books I self-published, and I'm thinking about going through the whole agent and all of that for.
That's what I want to do. I want to go through an agent. I do want to self-publish because I feel like it's cheaper, but I feel like
control over it.
Right. If I go through the route of an agent, I might get more exposure. Maybe even get a book tour. Who knows? But hey, let me take this moment to say, if you guys are enjoying this so far, then please follow us on our Facebook page, as well as our YouTube and our Spotify, where you can find more of the stuff someone like you wants to hear. Also, come say hi with us and stay updated on our official Discord, because none of you guys are joining it. Just follow the link in the description below. That'll make me so happy. Coraline, tell us a little bit about your 3rd volume. What's going on with the 3rd First Fret series?
So if the first book is everything that can go wrong in a relationship, and the second book is really figuring out how to make a relationship that is flawed and has some like terrible history work out. Right. The 3rd book is basically like where they actually decide whether they're going to make it work or split for good.
Ooh.
So
I love the ultimatum.
yeah.
I love the ultimatum because it gives the whole vibe of that volume specifically. Like, oh my God, this is it. This is the climax of their relationship. You know, are they gonna ride off into the sunset happily ever after, or is he gonna just split ways with her? Is she gonna split ways with him? He goes on tour, she goes back to living in isolation. That's interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about the how it unfolds? Don't tell us too much, but
It's really hard to talk about the second book without talking about the ending of the first book. It's almost impossible to talk about the third book without giving away like a lot. I will say throughout the books, they've talked about the fact that they will never get married and they will never have children. And but in the third book, they've been together 6 years.
Oh, so time has really passed.
So time has gone by, and they're really trying to decide where their values are and whether their values meet up.
Interesting. And with them, just so I'm hearing this right, with them trying to see if their values align, that alignment in their relationship, that's the make or break. If it doesn't align, fuck it, we're gonna split. If it does align, my God, I think we found something. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. There's a lot of things that go into deciding whether you want to spend your life with someone. And like I said, like, it's a gritty, realistic kind of thing. It's not like a floaty fantasy kind of thing. So they're dealing with the real issues. There's also like exciting, crazy stuff that goes on. And there's also like, oh, it's the big music industry. And she finally comes into her career in a big way in the third book. And also that gives her a new vantage point because she's no longer his tag along, his cheerleader. You know, she's her own artist and her own thing, and that gives her more options.
She now has a voice. She's more powerful as an individual. Oh, I love that. Malachi, you have a question? Gotta wait 3 seconds. And he got it.
Is he muted?
Oh, he is muted.
Interrupt me again, please. honestly. Thank you, guys. I was talking the whole time. It wasn't saying nothing.
Wow. I didn't mute you. Anyway, it wasn't me.
That was me.
I was going to ask, when did... I was going to ask, when did you start writing these books? When did you start, like, even thinking about writing?
That's a good question.
So these books I wrote primarily over like lockdown and COVID times. I started writing. I learned to write. I learned to like spell in kindergarten, and then like from the time I could string sentences together was like compulsively putting together little stories. And even before that, they're written transcripts of stories that I verbally told my grandmother and my mother that they wrote down for me because I couldn't write them, but I was already like telling stories. So, but these books happen mostly over COVID.
With that being said, would you say like you're good at verbally telling stories? Like, are you a storyteller like in a group of friends? Say like we were all hanging out. Would you be able to tell us a story?
I'm actually really shy. So talking in front of people like in person is really hard. I like to hide behind my books and just like, you have this, like, and go away from me.
It's funny, because if I heard correctly from Forbes magazine, they say that like 90% of authors out there, like any author, even nonfiction, are introverts. Would you say that's true?
You have to be able to sit in a room with yourself forever
That's very
put a book together.
Yeah.
You know, I think extroverts go out and tell their stories to people, and I think introverts sit at home and write their stories down.
Right.
That's
salesman. I love to just tell stories.
That's why you're only 6 chapters in.
Right. Yeah, I'm not spending any time putting it on paper. But that, that makes a lot of sense. That's crazy to think about. That really is. So I've got a question. So based on the topic of your book, I can safely assume you're a musically driven person. Is that correct to say, or at least it seems like
I
it?
can sing, but I can't play any instruments. But I love music, and I cultivate. Oh my gosh, this cat! I cultivate. I don't know if you can hear or not.
Yeah, we definitely can.
Just wants to say hi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I cultivate like lots of strange music. Like part of the reason why the artists are mostly Irish is because I was on a kick of like lots of different Irish artists.
Right.
Um
Do you like Hosier?
yeah. I mean I like Hosier. I like Dermot Kennedy more if we're gonna talk
Okay.
about like Irish artists.
Right.
But yeah.
So what would be your main genre?
I really like adult alternative, like just across the board. I like, folk music, and I like bluegrass, and
It's beautiful.
you know,
I think me and Will, no, I don't think I know this, but me and Will, we spent years trying to make or break our band. You know, we were doing metalcore for a long time. We turned into to pass. Yeah, that's right. Laugh. Anyways, but we were metalcore. We turned into there it is. I should never have said anything. I'm gonna finish my question. So
I'm gonna let this cat out.
yes,
But I'm still
yes, sure, go ahead. That's so funny.
Sorry, just bringing back memories. Bringing back memories. Those were the funny days.
Those were funny days.
Man, I love those days.
But,
I was the cameraman.
You were
I was the cameraman. I used to film you guys.
And I will
used to
say
do
this
that.
much. I will say this much. His camera work is stellar. This man has robotic arms. They don't move. They don't shake. Nothing. He had, and this is before like phones had stabilization in the cameras. He was just like amazing, amazing work. But to continue on, it makes me want to ask, how does music help or hurt your writing process? Because for me, I use music as a noise drowner, something to block out all the outside distractions. A very common use for most people, but sometimes I use it for inspiration if it's the right tune. I'm very interested on your take when it comes to music and your writing process.
Most of my characters have playlists.
Oh.
It's actually caused me some writer's block my next series because they don't really live in the world that we do, so they would not be able to listen to our music.
Right.
And so it's very hard for me to be like, this song works with this person. Whereas with this, with these books, I really had a very clear idea of, what they would be singing about, what they would be thinking about, what they would be, what they're like. I just got broken up with songs would be like, not necessarily the main characters, but the characters, the support characters.
Mm-hmm.
And, but every book I've ever written, whether it's been a little novella that I wrote in 3 days, or whether it's been like these projects, has a playlist that I listen to while I, that I put together and that I listen to while I write it. And, like for these books, it was a lot of, Say Lynn and Dermot Kennedy and Hosier and, like, Oh Wonder, like.
Right, right.
Very like, because, pop music is very good for, like relationship stuff. And then like.
It really is.
Dermot Kennedy and Hosier both write about like, like dark kind of emotional stuff.
It is a little heavy.
Yeah. So that was a good fit.
Okay. With that being said, if you could come up with a story on the top of your head, right? This is a little activity we're going to do. Come up with a story on the top of your head, pitch it in 7 sentences.
7 sentences. Do I have a genre guide?
It's whatever you want.
Okay.
Make it hard. You got to really think about this one.
Yeah. So first sentence. Person held against their will in a cult. But it's a like a cult where they celebrate joy and life and experiences, kind of like hedonistic. And a love story that's told in this like very like loving and open and wild environment, but also say they're I don't know, they're trapped in Antarctica or something. They're in a really like
harsh location
that's really isolated.
Right. So there is no escape.
There's no escape, so it's joy, but it's also like forced joy.
Right. Right. Okay. 2 more sentences.
Let's see. So trying to find opulence in a place where nothing grows, in a place where everything has to be shipped in, everything has to come from far away, but you're getting the best of the best of what you can get in Antarctica.
Right. Oh, okay. So
that's cool.
So let's piece it together. So it's someone trapped in a cult. The cult is very happy and hedonistic,
and opulent,
but it's in a place so isolated from growth that they need to ship things in and out, and there really is no escape from the joy. So this sounds like a psychological horror.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like. I like that.
I see the trailer for this being very yin and yang. Everything is perfect. Everything is horrible. Sunshine, rainbows. There's death around us.
See, now I need you to write that book. So
okay, deal.
Now I need to.
I'm gonna have to write it down because you know how I am.
Right, exactly. Will, what do you got for us?
Actually, just kind of based on that, the way you're able to rattle that off quickly. Who are some of your influences when it comes to world building like this? Because I mean, even with your books, the music industry is a wild place to be, and of course now this little germ of an idea, like coming up with that is very interesting.
So I dream of being able to world build like Neil Gaiman or Terry Pratchett. I want to be funny like Terry Pratchett and like intense and, surprising in crazy ways like Neil Gaiman. But also, I think my writing is closer to Rob McKinley's writing in that there's a down-to-earthness to my stories.
Grounded.
So even in like the cult setting, you'd be dealing with like, whether or not you get along with your roommate, So
what for those of us who are not familiar with Rob McKinley's work, what has he done?
She wrote Chalice. She does a lot of what else? I have a bunch of her stuff. She wrote The Blue Sword and The Hero's Crown, which is a 2-novel thing, and she wrote my favorite books of hers are Chalice and oh gosh, now it's gonna slip my mind. She wrote a really, really good vampire romance that's so down to earth and so grounded and so not like Twilight.
Right.
And I actually picked it up the same week that I picked up Twilight because I was a high school girl going through my library and Twilight was new and then this other book was new that I cannot remember the name of. No, Sunshine. It's called Sunshine.
Sunshine. I think she did Beauty, Deerskin, The Hero and the Crown. Mm-hmm. If you were to compare your favorite author to your least favorite author, what would be those major differences and why do you say?
How to pick a least favorite author? Honestly, I guess my least favorite author, this sucks, but my least favorite author would be someone that I, of course, will not name in the indie community who just doesn't edit and just doesn't have anybody else edit, doesn't edit their own stuff. And, so it just takes you out of it. And the more time and effort and energy you put into the work. And I think it's so important, especially in the indie community, to do that, even if you're editing for yourself, to edit like crazy. Because if somebody picks up, an indie book and it's poorly edited and not much time and effort has gone into it, and then they pick up another one and another one, they're going to stop reading indie books.
Right.
it's going to color their experience
forever.
Right. Yeah. I love that you say that, Will. It colors their experience. Now that's their impression of indie books. So then Miss Coraline, she comes out with her indie book and no one wants to pick it up because they had such a bad experience from the last guy.
Yeah.
Interesting. That I didn't even think about that. That's consumerism at its finest, you know? That's crazy. Malachi, what do you got for us? You got a question for Coraline? 30 seconds. There it is.
Sorry, had to unmute myself. Anyways, that's your name, Coraline?
Well, it's
Oh,
a
that's
pen
a
name,
nice
but
name.
it's
I love
really
that name.
close to my real name.
Oh, what's your real name?
I'm not gonna say that.
Malachi. Malachi. No.
I do plan on publishing
It's a worth a try.
my YA series under a different pen name, just
Okay.
because these are very adult books.
Right.
And so I don't want to cross streams too much there.
Right. Someone goes searching through just your author history and says like, oh, I like First Fred. What's this other one? And it's just wildly of another topic.
Yeah.
is
Well,
not the
it's
same.
the opposite that I'm worried about. Somebody who's very young reads my next series and, falls in love with it and is like, oh, I want to read everything this person's ever written because that's how I was when I was a kid.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, this is really kinky and really spicy. And like,
do you write you don't have to answer this question, but do you write erotica?
See, so when I recorded I did a voice recording of my first 2 books for my mother because she doesn't read page books. She only listens to books.
Right.
Very busy woman. And I really struggled taking out I obviously didn't want to record the sex scenes for my mom.
Right.
I had a hard time taking them out without putting a little like, these were the plot developments that happened during the sex scene, because I don't write sex for the sake of sex.
Right.
So I don't know that counts as erotica when it's really like plot driven and, relationship developy and, that kind of stuff.
You'd say it's more about the emotions behind the sex versus the actual physical action of having sex.
The emotions and, like people show an honest side of themselves when they're having sex that they don't necessarily show when they're not. And so especially with Michael and Semolina, like a lot of the red flags happen while they're, being intimate because, that's when he's letting his guard down.
Oh,
and that's also probably most of the times when they're alone because again on tour you're
never alone.
Someone's within arm's reach at all times, so when you're being intimate with someone else, that's got to be where all your walls are down.
I didn't even think about that's how that relationship where she would find the red flags. It happens during the most intimate moments for them. So what drew you to, like, what was your main inspiration for starting all of this?
There were a couple of things that I felt like I hadn't ever discovered authentically represented in books. So the first one is domestic violence, but the second one is kind of a piece and a part of that, which is I wanted to write about someone who is disabled, differently disabled than me, but also disabled, because I think that people who are disabled can find themselves being in domestic violence relationships a lot easier than people who are not. And I wanted to talk about that in a really realistic way that wasn't like, oh, you're doomed to be in a domestic violence relationship. There's no hope for you. You can't have a happy relationship, because eventually they have one. But that talks about the real pitfalls and risk factors of, of being somebody that it's easy to like put in a box to make, what's the word? Make childlike an adult that you can infantilize because they have, some kind of disability.
Right.
And Michael really sees himself as protecting her in a lot of ways when really she's capable of protecting herself, and it's one of the ways that they kind of like backslide.
Right. He's got this parental view over the relationship.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
How challenging was the initial process of writing the first book?
Um, it wasn't really. It was kind of like I couldn't help it.
Compulsive,
Yeah.
right? So you would say it wasn't challenging at all. You just started writing, boom, 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 54 drafts later, and you had something.
Yeah. I mean, after it's still compulsive, but the harder part is the last few drafts where you're like, I'm going to put this in front of somebody else's face at some point.
Mhm.
And
Right,
that's where it
like
gets scary. And
you're like 2 drafts away from publicly showing everybody your work.
right.
Mhm.
How do you deal with that fear?
Hold your breath and jump.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I
No
love
guts, no
it.
glory.
That's right. Hey, the next episode of another show. Can you compare where you are now to where you were back then when starting, and what's the difference?
You mean like life wise or like writing wise or
Writing wise or
Yeah.
life wise, whatever you view that question.
Whatever
As.
you're
What's your
comfortable with.
perspective? Yeah.
yeah. So life wise, I am like living a very different life than I was. I was very isolated when I was writing these books. I'm having trouble writing continuously and so much now that I'm like living in a family and have like a kid to deal with, and
Right.
but so isolation definitely for me creates creativity and creates the space for but as far as writing, my writing, these were the books that I learned how to write on, which is why I
Right.
self-published them.
Oh.
And my writing now is a lot more skillful. It's a lot more more head, less heart. It's a lot more plotting versus pantsing. I'm sure y'all have talked about that on
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more. I'm gonna put together a story to say something. I have a
Right.
goal here rather than like this is a bunch of dreams that I've had that I
Right.
just have to write down and then stitch together in an interesting way.
So between First Fred Volume 1, 2, and 3, what stands out as the most emotional for you, like sentimental?
It's between 1 and 2 because 2 is a deeper investigation into who they are,
Right,
and
as people.
who they, what their challenges, individual challenges are, and what they, can become. And also like I said, some of the abusive stuff comes from my own history, which means of course writing the first book was really intense, but also like writing that redemption story was also really intense because I had a lot of questions. I know people who have had domestic violence relationships, that they've done the work. They've gone to, the anger management. They've gone to the Codependence Anonymous. They've done the work. But I've never experienced that. So a little bit of is like what could have been maybe, so that was intense for me.
And are you in a happy relationship now?
Absolutely.
Good.
Good to hear.
So your other relationship was a long time ago, I assume, right? Are you any closer to, and of course you say you're in a happy relationship now, are you any closer to seeing the relationship that you want versus the relationship that you had?
It's just worlds apart,
Yeah.
I'm in a relationship that's never had any kind of, assault or abuse or anything. It's just a really supportive, warm, wonderful kind of relationship. And so the thing that is the connective tissue is that I know those red flags and I look for them when I'm dating, and I don't go down those roads anymore.
Mhm.
And it's been a
Right.
long time since I have, and that's what led me to a really healthy, happy relationship.
You would saying being able to identify those red flags enables you to not rabbit hole into some kind of disgusting, gross person.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And just ignore the those type of people altogether and just focus on the good.
And it can be hard because once you've been in a domestic violence relationship, you're likely to end up one again. And I wasn't a child of one of those relationships, but if you are a child of one of those relationships, you're even more likely to end up in one yourself.
Right.
And so, you know, like recognizing those flags, and then even though those are the kinds of people who you find yourself attracting, like having to drop those like they're hot, you know, really fast.
Yeah, and it's so true, you know, like, have you ever heard the expression pretty people are problematic?
I haven't.
Yeah, that's an expression in modeling, right? And it came about when Ashton Kutcher, like in the 90s, when Ashton Kutcher was at the height of him being Kelso, you know, in that 70s show. And he was just, I mean, he's so pretty, you know, but he had so many problems at the time. And people saw him as a problem child. Of course, he got better and became this amazing entrepreneur that everybody loves now. But it stands to fact, just in my personal experience, that pretty people are problematic. You know, I've been problematic before, you know, and I think I have a pretty smile, you know. And then I've dealt with a lot of pretty people in my life where, I mean, I've been in an abusive relationship with a beautiful woman, and she was just the worst human being. So literally the worst human being. But it also makes me want
For
to
legal
ask you,
purposes, allegedly.
allegedly, but removing yourself from business, removing yourself from your sales of your books, how, if at all, did doing like writing all the time impact your own happiness of reading?
Well, I have a lot less time to read when I'm writing,
Right.
because I just write round the clock. I just kind of,
Right.
you know,
That's what you do.
yeah. But when I take a break and read someone else's work, especially if I enjoy it,
Right.
it just feeds me so much. It's just like, you know, the thing you were talking about, writer's block. Like another really good way to deal with writer's block is to read a good book. You know, in the genre of what you're writing.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, reading really just feeds that bug, I think.
It's kind of like fuel for the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Because everything is derivative, you know, in part, you
Right.
know, and so like you get this, even if it's just an emotion that you get from the book that you're like, I want to write about this emotion. I want to give people this emotion, you know, or I want to give myself this emotion, you know, in a different way.
Right.
You know, that's, you know.
Do you guys, Will, Malachi, do you guys have any last questions for Coraline?
I got one last thing. I mean, you already answered
Please.
the question I was going to ask is, do you kind of set aside time for writing? But you kind of just mentioned how you just kind of write all the time. But another question off that is, when you do find the time to read someone else's, excuse me, someone else's work, do you find yourself kind of editing and critiquing their work, or do you just enjoy it for what it is?
I really am an enjoyer at face value kind of person. Like, you know, there's all these things on YouTube about like, you know, how this movie did it wrong, and like, you know, cinema sins or whatever. And I'm just like,
every single thing.
Yeah, I just don't. I enjoy watching them afterwards, but I'm always like, that just didn't occur to me because I was too busy thinking how cool that transition was and like how exciting, you know, whatever was happening on screen was.
Right.
And I'm the same way when I read, unless there's so many grammatical errors and stuff that it just rips me out of the book.
Hours.
Right.
Then yeah, I just take it for what it's worth and really enjoy the ride.
I really respect that answer. Malachi, you got anything? 3 seconds.
There
it is.
Okay. I really hate it that my screen lags like this, and like it takes you guys like even 3 seconds, even more to even answer me. It would be so weird because you guys would stare at me for a minute, and I'd be like, "Did they hear me, or am I like just taking myself slow?" But anyways, I was gonna say, let me see your books again. Your screen.
Let's see. First one.
Those covers look nice.
Yeah, I love my covers. I picked the photos out.
Where did you get them done at?
Purchased a lot of the photos, and then I had somebody on Fiverr make the covers.
Oh, I tell you what, Fiverr is a
That looks
godsend.
really
Very useful service.
Yes.
Yeah, because I could never have done, what she did with these.
Right. And I had to teach myself how to Will knows this. I can do it in like 10 seconds flat now. But before, graphic design and stuff like that,
He's gotten good at it.
Oh my god. It was just like, ugh, I don't even want to touch it because I know it's gonna be another 6 hours before I get it done. But now it's like, oh, we need a graphic. Okay. Done. And
That's beyond me. Kudos.
It's been such an amazing journey, not just through the show, but also through your stories and your career and everything that you've done to bring this full circle. I mean, we're talking about First Fret Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3 and beyond. I'm curious, is there a skill that over the course of your career in writing that has been the most valuable or transferable to your everyday life?
Being observant about people, I guess. So like there's, some people call themselves empaths, and I don't know if I would use that word for myself or not, but I definitely pick up people's emotions, people's little quirks when they speak, that kind of stuff, and pour that stuff into my books. But it also helps me, deal with people,
Right.
figure out what people's motivations are, figure out what people's needs are, especially if they're not great at communicating that themselves. And so, yeah.
It helps you connect with other people.
Also doggedness, just keeping on going and keeping on going no matter what.
Right.
That's useful in life too.
Right, that it really is. Look at you, Coraline, Corsette, facing the What's Poppin' crew and opening up to the people. Here you are. Now's the time. Nothing left to do. The floor is yours. To the audience, let them know what's going on right now in your life and how they can find you.
So you can find me, especially on TikTok, at author Coraline Corsette. That's probably the best place to find me because I do a lot of excerpt reading. So if you're not sure if you want to read my books yet, I'm working my way through some of my favorite quotes from this book, and I will be moving on to these books as soon as I'm done with that. So TikTok's probably the best place to find me if you want to like send me messages, ask me questions, anything like that. That's the place to find me as well. So thank you.
Awesome. And guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please, for God's sakes, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and get us on Spotify, where you can find more of the stuff someone like you wants to hear, more of What's Poppin'. So guys, join our official Discord. Go ahead and follow the crap out of Coraline Corsette, because that's one hell of an author right there. And I'm going to have to check out your books. I can find them on Amazon. I know that. And we're going to have to talk again. Coraline, if you would have us again, that would be amazing. But we thank you for getting on to today's show. You've given us a lot of value. You've given us a lot of content, and you've given us a lot to think about when it comes to the writing process of fictional storytelling. To everybody out there,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And to everybody out there, please, if you're a writer, take this show into consideration, because some of the skills, some of the perspectives that Coraline has given us will help you out. Until next time, thanks for joining. All right.